In this lesson, we're going to learn how to format a worksheet to call attention to important data and to make that data easier to read. So what you're going to need to do is to get this file copied over to your OneDrive, and when you do that, you don't necessarily have to change the name or anything. But the first thing we're going to do is to select a range of cells and change the number format. So what we're going to do is we want to select cells D4 to D32. Now you can click, hold, and drag with your mouse, or you can come over here to the name box and type in D4 colon D32 and hit enter on your keyboard, and when you do that, it selects all the cells in that range. Now I did it like that to demonstrate that if you have a really big range of cells that you are having to select, the name box may be an easier way to go about doing so. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come up here under the number group that's under the Home tab, and we want to select the accounting option. Now the accounting option is displayed here by default on this number group, and if you click this button, as I'm about to do, what it will do is it will take these cells, and by the way, I accidentally or must have gotten too close to this arrow right here, and when I click the arrow, it's asking me exactly what nation's monetary currency or accounting format features do you want. And because I'm here in the United States, I want to use the American dollar sign, the US dollar sign. Here you would have the British pound. Here you have the European euro. Here you have the Chinese yen. So, but obviously I want to select English United States, and what that does, as you see here, it takes the contents of the cells and it puts a dollar sign out to the far left of each of those cells, and it slightly indents about one space off the right side of the column, and it rounds it to 2 decimals. Now when you look at this, you're also going to see what you probably know as hashtags. Now old people like me know these as pound signs, and what this means when you look at cell D7, D16, and there's a couple more in here, what that means in Excel is that this column is too narrow to display the full contents of that cell. And what we're going to have, we'll fix that here shortly. But the next thing that we want to do is we want to select cells F4 through H32. So again, here if you come to the name box, you could type in F4 colon H32 and hit enter on your keyboard. And this time we want to apply the comma style formatting to these cells. Now these are different in that what it'll do is if you have digits, if you have numbers that have 4 or more decimals, or I'm sorry, 4 or more digits on the left side of the decimal, it will put a comma after every third from the right that's on the left side of the decimal. Now again, you learned all this probably in about 3rd grade, but it'll make more sense when I click this button, and then you see here we've got numbers like this one right here where it's 3750, and you've got a comma between the 3 and the 7, so in between the thousands and the hundreds place. And also notice how all of these numbers are aligned. They're aligned at the decimal, and then they're rounded to 2 spaces, or I'm sorry, they're rounded to 2 digits, 2 decimals. That's what I was trying to say, 2 decimals. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to format J4 to J32, and again, I know I could easily click, hold, and drag with my mouse, but I again want to come over here to the name box and type in J4 colon J32 and then hit enter with my keyboard. And these cells I want to format as a percentage. And again, under the Home tab, we're going to come over here to the number group, and we're going to click the button that's got the percent sign on it. And in this case, when you do it, it rounds it to a percent sign, but rounded to no decimals. So what we want to do is we want to change the decimal. We want to change it so that it rounds it to 2 decimal places. So actually to 1 decimal place. So what I want to do is I want to come up here, and here is the increase decimal button and the decrease decimal button, and I want to click the increase decimal button one time, and when I do, you see what these numbers look like. Now again, one thing I want you to make sure that you understand is that depending upon the settings of your computer that you're working on, some of these directions may be slightly different. So for example, when we clicked the percent button on my computer, it rounded it to no decimal points. On your computer, it may round it to 2 decimals. So it just kind of depends upon your computer settings. But the main purpose of this lesson is to teach you how to make the changes regardless of whatever the default settings are, but to teach you how to make these changes so that you can make it look exactly the way you want to make it look. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to select B4 to B31, and we're going to format dates. So I want to come to the name box, type in B4, B31, hit enter, and it selects these cells. Now there's a couple different ways that you can go about formatting dates. Now the date format that we've got right now is referred to as short date, which it just shows as few decimals as few numbers as needed. I was trying to say digits. So for example, if you look at this first one that's selected 1/1/2016, that would be January 1st, 2016. Now, a couple things you need to understand. In some languages, they commonly express the date before they do the month. Here in the United States, in the English language, we tend to express month, date, and then year, where here, and that's the way it is done here, but in other countries, you may see the month and the date reversed. So what we want to do here is we want to select a different date format than the one that's currently given to us. So what we have to do now in Excel Online, we have to come over here. Notice how it says that these are formatted by date. But if I come over here and click this drop down arrow, we're going to have to come down here and select more number formats. And because it's already formatted as a date, over here at the right, you're going to see several different options of how you could go about formatting dates. And the one that they want us to pick in the text that I'm looking at is this one right here, is where it says 14 March 12. And basically what this is saying is that you want to put the date first and then an abbreviation for the month and then 2 digits for the year. So I want to click on this one. And by the way, notice here in the online version, you've got 2 that are the exact same thing. And if you look up here at the top in the sample, it shows you exactly what it's going to look like based upon whichever one that you pick. And as I look at the textbook that I'm looking at, the one that they want you to pick appears to be, we want to pick the, let's see here, the first one. They want us to pick the first one. And so this one leaves off leading zeros, meaning for the first day of January, there's no 0 in front of the 1. And if you look down here on this one, there is a 0 in front. So it leads off the leading zeros. But notice that all these are different. It kind of depends when you're talking about dates. How do you want it to be formatted? So I want to click OK on my computer. And now you see how all of these are listed, where you've got the date first, and then the month, and then the year. And again, in the United, it's always a matter of preference, but just know that in other languages, this is the way they always express a date. So the next thing we want to do is we want to format the cells in C4 through C31. So I want to come here, go to the name box, and type in C4:C31. and I want to hit the enter key on my keyboard, and it selects these cells. This is another version of the date. So what we're going to do here, we want to select the format of the date. So we have to come back here in the online version, go under the number group, click this drop down arrow. We have to come down here to where it says more number formats, and this time we want to select this one right here where you just see the date and then the month. Okay, and remember, the main reason we're doing these differently is just to show you the different ways that you could go about formatting dates. And so these just leave off the year. All right. So the next thing we're going to learn how to do is how to take care of this problem where all of the hashtags exist. And also, you may have noticed that column A looks like that it is too narrow as well. And basically, these two columns have the same issue. They're not wide enough to display their contents. But when you're talking about a column that contains numbers, you see these hashtags or these pound signs or number signs. And then over here, you just see the text. It looks like it's cut off. And there's a couple different ways that you can fix this. So, and this is one of those instances where the online version of Excel works a little bit differently than the desktop version of Excel. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to come over here and take my mouse, and just to highlight it, I want to click on the column D row header. And then what I want to do is I want to come over here and move my mouse over so that my pointed finger becomes a double I-beam with the arrows pointing in opposite directions. And then what I want to do is to double click on that column border, and then what that does is that it makes that column widen out to fit the width of the longest entry in that column. And again, I did that by double clicking. Now you could have just as easily click, hold, and drag this out a little bit more, and it would look like this. And also, if you wanted to make it a specific width, you could right click on top of it on the column header and go to column width, and you can make it whatever size you wanted to make it. So let's say let's say you wanted to make it exactly 15 points or 15 units, which again here it says default units. If you roll over this in the online version, we're talking about point size. And on the certification exam, it's pretty much the exact same method. It'll look slightly different, but they may ask you to make a column exactly a specific size, and you would need to follow the procedure that I just showed you. And then you would come over here, and now here's the thing. Column A is a little bit different because if you click in cell A1, you've got this text that's here inside of cell A1, and because there's so much text in here, they've got this formatted slightly different. And what I'm going to do is, if you were to do with column A what we just did to column D with double clicking, and I'm going to go ahead and do it and show you what happens. So I double clicked on this. Notice how much wider column A gets, because this text that you see here is in cell A1, it is all in that one cell. So because of that, in order to make this fit, that is part of column A. So again, when you double click, that's what it does. It expands it to fit the longest entry in that column. Well, we'll deal with that here now. I actually want to go back and make this a little bit more narrow. And I'm going to eyeball this one. I'm going to scroll down, and everything fits in here, and I've got a little bit of space right here between these entries that are kind of long, and we're just going to leave it like that. And some other things that you could do to make this look better is you could select with your mouse, if you take your mouse and put it in the middle of cell A1 and then drag it through maybe cell D1. And then the next thing that you could do is to come up here and under the alignment group under your home tab, you've got this button for merge and center. Well, next to that there is a drop down arrow, and if you were to click on that and select merge cells, what it's going to do is basically it's going to turn all of those cells, it's going to merge them into one cell, and really all it's doing is it's deleting the borders for the cells that were previously in B1, C1, and D1. And again, notice how when I click on the cell, if you look up here, you see what column headers are selected. It's columns A through D. But then if I click on the one right below it, notice how in this case, you actually see only column D because those cells have not been merged into one big cell. And again, that really just affects how this is going to appear on the monitor itself. Would not necessarily affect how it appears if you had to actually print this out. All right, now some other things that we're going to do in this one, I'm pretty sure you know, is changing the font and the font size. So what we want to do is we want to go through and we want to change the font for the text that is in row 3, and we want to change that to Times New Roman. Actually, we want to do this for rows 1, 2, and 3. So what I want to do is I want to select the cells that are in rows 1, 2, and 3. I want to make sure I only get those cells that are in. Actually, I want to do it in, I want to come out through here. I want to stop at column J. All right. So basically, you're going to select A1 to J3. And then we want to change the font by going under the home group and going under the font, the home tab, and then the font group. And then we want to change this text that we've selected to Times New Roman. And then we want to change, and by the way, when I say the font, that is the appearance, that's the general appearance of the text that you've selected. And now we want to change the font size. Now, by default on Excel Online, it's size 11. We want to make this text size 20. And when we do that, notice how that kind of changes the need to change some of the things that we've done previously. Notice how that these column headers up here are now too narrow. You can't see them, so we're going to have to make some further adjustments on this. Now, the next thing that we need to do is you can also, and you click this button right here, increasing the font size. You can click this button 2 times, and what it will do is it will move you up to the next 2 predefined sizes that are in this drop-down menu. Now, in this case, we're at size 20. If we were to click this button twice, it should take us up to 26 because that is the next 2 predefined sizes, which are 24 and 26. So if you click this, notice how now it's 24. And now if you click it, it's at 26. Okay. Now, that's not necessarily what we really wanted to do. We're going to go back and make some further changes. So now what we want to do is we want to go back and select cells A3 through J3 again if needed. Well, they're already selected. So now what we want to do is to go change all this font size back to 14 because for what we want to do, it's a little bit too big. And again, remember, I'm just trying to show you the different ways that you can go about changing your fonts and your font sizes. And when you change it to 14, it looks a whole lot better in terms of you can see most of everything that you need to see especially in row 3. So now what we want to do is we're going to make these a little bit wider. So I want to take my mouse and I want to click, hold, and drag on top of the column headers for A through H. And now I want to double click any of these column borders that we see. And when we do that, what it does is that it adjusts the column width to the longest entry that any of those need based upon its longest entry. Now, in the desktop version of this, it works slightly different. It would automatically adjust all of these to the width of the longest entry in each column, where here on the online version, it does it just based upon whatever the longest, based upon whichever specific border you click on. So I want to come back here again, and I want to double click on the right border, column border between columns A and B. And again, the online version doesn't work quite the way that I'm used to. So, and again, it's a learning experience and it's okay. So I'm just going to come through here, and we can do these one at a time. It's not a big deal to drag these and to make them wider, or if we need to actually drag them with our mouse. Again, everything that I'm used to doing on the desktop version doesn't always work on the online version, and this is one of those things. So again, I just want you to understand how to do it. All right, so now the next thing that we want to do is we want to select the cells that are in A3 through J3. We want to do some more formatting to those. And what we want to do is to make these bolder. Now, to make something bold makes them darker. It makes them easier to stand out, makes them stand out more, easier to read. And here on the desktop version, the bold button is right here. So you could click that. You could see how these get darker. And then the next thing we want to do is to click on cell A3 only. And now what we want to do is we want to click the underline button, which is right here. And the underline will put a line underneath the text. Okay. And then the next thing we want to do is to hit the italics button, which will kind of take this text and make it crooked, if you will. Now, to turn these features off, you do the exact same thing you did to turn them on. You would click the italics button again. Now, on the desktop version, these have keyboard shortcuts that may or may not work here in the online version. And those keyboard shortcuts, for example, for italics would be Control and I. Now I'm going to try it here, but it may not work. But it does work, because you see how that went right back to that slanted type. And again, so some of these keyboard shortcuts work on the online version, some of them don't. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to learn a feature that to me is very useful. It's one of the most useful features that you'll learn when it comes to formatting text. And I'll tell you, it actually works a whole lot easier on the desktop version. So if you're doing this on the online version like I am, it's not going to work quite as well as what I would like it to. Now, we're going to use this feature called Format Painter, and if you've gone through the previous lessons on Microsoft Word, you were introduced to that. And basically what the Format Painter feature will do is to take all of the formatting of text that's on one cell and change it to the, allows you to copy and basically paste the formatting into other cells. Now, what we're going to do is we want to come up here and click on cell A3, and then we want to click this Format Painter button. And then we're going to come back, and you'll see how the mouse, when we move it down, it changes to an arrow and a paintbrush. And now I want to click on cell B3. And the only change that was made to this cell was that it added the underline. Now, let me just, for the sake of example, take these, and I want to take off this formatting. I want to take off the bold. And what I want to do is now I want to come over here and I want to select Format Painter on cell B3, and then I want to paste it on cell C3. And you see that B3 and C3 now look exactly alike. And then I want to do this one more time, and I want to copy the formatting of C3, and now I want to paste it through D3 all the way through J3. And notice how all of these are now bolded, and they have the same font, the same font size, and they're also all underlined. And that's what the Format Painter feature will allow you to do. It allows you to take formatting rather than text, but it allows you to take the formatting and copy it and paste it into another location in the document. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change one of the things that we did earlier. I want to take cell A1, which is now one really big cell, and I actually want to select all the way through H1, A1 through H1. And what I want to do now is to click the Merge and Center button, and this time I'm not going to click the arrow. And look what happens when I click Merge and Center. It merges all the cells together, as you can now see by looking up here at the column headers up here. Now if I click this again, notice how the merge part of that function stays as it is, but it also will center the text. And again, this is one of those features that if you use it, the order in which you perform the steps, it matters, and it will affect exactly how all this plays out. Again, it's something that you just kind of have to learn to deal with, and everyone's computer settings could be slightly different, especially if you're using the desktop version of this. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to go and we're going to insert some additional rows and columns. So what I want to do is I want to go on this cell A32, and basically we want to add additional information down here. Now, by the way, I just noticed that we've got the hashtags again, so I'm going to need to make column H a little bit wider. I want to click, hold, and drag. And again, it really doesn't matter which method that you use to make it happen, because the bottom line is you're going to have to tweak a lot of things until you get this to look exactly the way you want it to look. So what I want to do is I want to come down here to cell A32, and I want to right click it, and then I want to go to insert, and then I want to select entire row. Now again, that's actually a little bit different. So let me change the directions right here. I want to insert cells and shift down, I think is what we have to do on the online version. Let me see if this works the way I think it will. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do, and that's okay. What I want to do is I want to hit the undo button up here to bring that back. I want to try this another way. I want to right click on the actual row header for 32. I want to right click on that and then just go to insert rows. And what that's going to do is to add a new row in here. Now, one of the reasons that doing this in this manner is so beneficial is that these cells down here that previously had functions put in them, now on the desktop version, these would automatically update. And you see as I click this, it still says D31, meaning that if we add additional data in here, that it's not going to automatically update. So this is one of those things where, again, it didn't go the way exactly I expected, because I'm used to doing this on the desktop version, and desktop version works slightly different. But we'll come deal with that here shortly. But what we want to do is we want to go next to the row 27 heading right here. And what we want to do is, in this case, we want to hit the delete row button. Now, when we do that, notice how in this case, this cell right here and where the totals are at, now it did update. And when you're working with data that's in a table, and this is in a table, it looks like a table, but it doesn't have the full functionality of a table. But when you do this, doing things in the middle of a table, as we just did with row 27, works a whole lot better than trying to add additional rows at the very bottom or at the very top of the table, because the formulas that are referencing the table may not automatically update. So what we want to do now, and by the way, now that we've done that, this is still got the correct formula in it, although to me it's kind of pointless to have a blank row of data down here. I mean, it could be, I wouldn't necessarily do it. It's just anytime you're doing things of this nature, you have to make sure that your formulas are still correct and calculating exactly what you want them to calculate. So just be careful with that. So now what we want to do is we want to go to the column J heading right here. And what we want to do next is we want to, and I find it hard to believe that they're wanting us to delete that particular column, but that's exactly what they're wanting us to do. They're wanting us to delete the entire contents of column J. So I right click on the column heading and I go to delete columns. And what that does is it not only does it delete that entire column, but it deletes what's in that column as well. And by default, it will move all of the columns to the right of that, one column to the left, as you just saw with this right here.